And so
Sure.
that's what drew me into eDynamic learning. And it's funny, they had a position open for something else. And another tip that I found on LinkedIn, it just said, hey, even if you don't hit all the qualifications, apply for the job anyway, right? Start that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I did. And in that first conversation, they said, you know what? We really think we want to have this business development area. And I really think that you would, fit in great there. And so I said, you know what? I can commit to anything for a year, right? I'm going to dive in, figure out what it is, and do it to the best that I can. And I did. For a year, I was the only actual BDR for the company, representing all of the U.S. And at the end of that year, they came back and said, you know what? It's been a great program. It's been really successful. We'd like you to build a team.
Hello, everyone. We are super excited to have Miss Jaime Boyette on the My K12 Career Show to share her story, her journey with our viewers and our listeners. Jaime is currently living in the great state of Nevada, the city of Sparks, and we are super grateful that she's come on the show. She has a rich history in the K-12 space, but she's currently in the ed tech space, but she has been a teacher, an administrator, and a little over 2 years ago, she moved over into the ed tech space, and she's working for eDynamic Learning as one of their BDRs, which stands for Business Development Representative Manager. Jaime, thank you so much for coming on the show. What's going on in your life and in your K-12 ed tech career right now?
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I love to talk education. So anytime I get the chance to do that, I just kind of dive in. So we still are traveling full time. We'll be in Nevada probably for a while, close to a year, I think, this project. My husband's actually a traveling welder.
Okay.
So we travel with his job, and I've still got 2 teenagers at home. I have one that's got his first job right now, and he'll graduate this year
Nice.
and go to college. And then I've got a 15-year-old still, but I have 3 boys total.
Okay.
And so I work remote from
Okay.
home for eDynamic Learning. And right now we're just enjoying, because I am born and raised in Texas, but my entire life there, we're just enjoying the cold for a while, the snow, and getting ready to go snowboarding again and hang out. And that's just kind of what we're doing.
That's awesome. So you started out in K-12 education. What were you teaching?
I've actually been working in education since I was 19.
Wow.
So both my parents were educators. Both
Okay.
my sisters are educators as well. And so at 19, I decided to be a substitute teacher. So I started there.
Nice.
And then I ended up, because to be honest, I was going to be the rebel, right? I was going to be the one that was not going to be an educator because everyone else was.
Mm-hmm.
I had that idea in my head, and then I started to substitute, and they had a position open up. They needed somebody to kind of run their computer lab and do the tech stuff. And I was into the computer thing back then, before all this coding and, programming language stuff came out. But I was, really interested in that. So I took a position as a teacher's aide and started going to school at night. And I did that for about 3 years, finished my bachelor's degree, and just so happened that it lined up that they had a tech app position come open at their junior high. And I did that, and I stayed in that position for, almost 10 years, I believe.
Okay.
And just decided to take that natural flow that the rest of my family had done. My dad became an administrator. My mom was a school counselor, and my oldest 2 sisters had become administrators at that point as well. So I decided to go ahead and I guess jump on that bandwagon and got my master's degree from Lamar University in Beaumont
Okay.
and became an administrator. And my first admin job was not even technically a principal, it was just a director.
Okay.
And I had my own campus of students that were moved into an alternative setting program. So it wasn't necessarily the discipline alternative. A lot of people go, oh, alternative school, they automatically think it's kids that got into trouble. This was more kids that were getting to the point where they might age out without getting their credits and finishing high school. They needed to recover a lot of credits, whether that was for attendance reasons or something else. But on top of that, they still had to pass the state standardized test.
Okay.
So I split the day where they came to school half a day and we worked on credit recovery. And then I ran 2 sessions of tutoring. And the name has changed a few times. It was PACS and TEACS and a STAR. At this point, I think it was still PACS test. But anyway, we did that. And I always go to that for 2 reasons. One, I feel like it was my favorite position,
Sure.
right? The kids needed me. They needed the support. So I wasn't just a director. I was also a teacher, a tutor, but I was a friend and a counselor. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You wear all of those hats in education. And I think it ended up being probably one of my most favorite positions because that first year was just really unique. We had a great group of kids, built a great relationship with them, and graduated the most kids in the program in a single year.
Nice.
And that was exciting. So they all passed their state standardized test. They all got their credits and received their high school diploma, and just super exciting. Right.
That's awesome.
But then I became an assistant principal in Marshall, Texas.
Okay.
I was there, and then I decided to do elementary school for a year, and I went all the way back to the other side of Texas to Refugio, which is going towards Corpus Christi, right past Victoria, that area. Super small little town, but amazing at football. At that point, though, I was a single mom with 3 kids.
Okay.
And especially when I was in Marshall at a 5A high school, they don't just have band and football, right? They've got orchestra and all these things. So I felt like I just wasn't really present at home anymore. My time was, constantly, you had to be at everything. So always gone. So that's when I think a friend introduced me to the idea of working at Connections Academy at an online school. And so I started to feel it out a little bit, research that, and I thought, this might work for me. I could still kind of do some of this admin stuff. I'll still be in education. I just won't have that day-to-day interaction with the students. But I did it. Absolutely loved it. I will never knock virtual school either. Sometimes it's a fantastic option for students, and stuck with that for a while. I was a teacher. They don't call it a principal there. They call it like a teacher manager.
Okay.
In your niche. I taught, again, everything technology, and then ended up leaving there to go to iSchool Virtual in Texas.
Okay.
Again, another amazing virtual school program. It's probably even more personalized for students because it's smaller.
Okay.
Smaller groups and interaction with teachers. But it just so happened that after year 2, when we had decided to change into this kind of lifestyle, they changed their policy because they wanted to be able to utilize their staff to go do in-person testing and all those types of things. They wanted you to live in Texas. And that had already left Texas. So that took me to the drawing board, and I was kind of like, well, what can I do next? Or do I need to go back to Texas, right? Maybe this just isn't going to work and I need to go back. And I laugh because I tell people all the time, I literally Googled what are other jobs teachers could do because I had no clue what was out there for options. And I was like, I know I don't want to go back to school. I've already done that twice.
Yeah.
And that kind of took me into ed tech and LinkedIn. So brought me over there, and I just started, there's a hashtag on LinkedIn called transitioning teachers.
Okay.
And that drew me into all these tips and tricks and things that, people were saying, hey, I left education. This is what I'm doing now. And one of the pieces of advice was before you start looking at roles, look at companies,
Okay.
right? See if there's a company that resonates with you, what you taught, things like that. And that drew me to eDynamic Learning.
Okay.
And then that's how I tie it back to that very first admin position, because I still am connected with many of those kids still today. It's so funny when they were in junior high at one point, the kids were like, we want to be your Facebook friend, and you're like, no, you're still in school.
Yeah,
Now they're friends of mine on Facebook and I'm
for
watching them
sure.
raise their
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
But that particular group of kids, I thought, if I could have gone one step further and not just gotten them to the diploma, but gotten them one of these industry certifications where they would have already been ready to go into a high paying or, at least something that they were interested in
Sure.
career versus, and I hate the word just, but nowadays it's just a high school diploma. What do you do next? Right? If you graduate high school, what are your options? And do you even know what you want to do? Right? Are we fostering that sort of exploration while they're in school so that when they leave, they're not going, what do I do now? Right? Like,
Right.
where do I go? What do I do? Especially for kids that college may not be an option, right?
That's
Maybe
true.
they just don't do well in school. They don't want to be in school, and maybe
Mhm.
it's financial. You never know. But are we setting them up for that success? And so
Sure.
that's what drew me into eDynamic Learning. And it's funny, they had a position open for something else. And another tip that I found on LinkedIn, it just said, hey, even if you don't hit all the qualifications, apply for the job anyway, right? Start that conversation.
Hmm.
And so that's what I did. And then that first conversation, they said, you know what? We really think we want to have this business development area. And I really think that you would, fit in great there. And so I said, you know what? I can commit to anything for a year, right? I'm going to dive in, figure out what it is, and do it to the best that I can. And I did. For a year, I was the only actual BDR for the company, representing, all of the US. And at the end of that year, they came back and said, you know what? It's been a great program. It's been really successful. We'd like you to build a team.
Wow.
So I became a manager and I went to educators. My entire team of 6, they all left the classroom to come work
Wow.
in ed tech. And I
Are they
believe,
full time?
yes,
Okay. How does that look? I mean, is it one of those situations where they are paid just salary, or are they paid salary plus commission for the business that they bring in? How does that look?
yeah. So I know different companies do it different ways, but for us, we do a base salary and then they get paid per opportunity that they bring in to the company.
That's really cool. Yeah, so you built out your team. Is it set in stone, or I mean, like you said, you're over the entire United States, and so I would have to believe we were just talking about Texas. Texas has over 1,200 school districts, right? Like, how would that look in terms of your team? Do you anticipate growing even more to meet the demand? How does that look?
I hope so. I hope we get to the point where we are growing more, and just fostering. We like to foster career paths. We like to say, hey, what are you interested in? Which area do you want to go into? And foster that. So actually, 3 of the women that I brought in last year to work on my team actually just got promoted to inside sales positions. So they will be start to finish being able to work in a consultative approach with school districts to figure out
Mhm.
how we can help them the most. So that's exciting. I'm big on relationships, building relationships. I did the same thing in my classroom,
Sure.
right? And I do the same thing in this position where, you know, I'm going to foster what they want to do and do my best to help them get to that point as well. And to really kind of own what we do. And I feel like when you're calling educators and you're trying to really understand how they envision their program, how their community envisions their program, and where you can fit into that piece, I really feel like there's not much better than an educator that's been there, right, to have that
Sure.
conversation. So I always go in and pull those transitioning teachers that are wanting to leave the public space.
So how does that look for a district? Fill in the blank district. how would you reach out to them? Because I would have to believe that most districts, and maybe I'm wrong about this, maybe you'll totally correct me on this, but I would have to believe most districts have something in place. Maybe it's not exactly fitting the model that you guys have in place, but they have something where students have some sort of access to some sort of vocational training that might lead to some sort of competency. How do you do that? Is it a situation where you just cold call a district and say, hey, this is what we do and this is how we can help you and we just want a conversation? How does that look?
That is kind of the idea. So we do, especially in Texas, we do our research, right? So in Texas right now, they have this huge proclamation, which is what other people kind of call textbook adoption, right? This series of when they grab new textbooks or new curriculum that they want to use in these various programs. Other states have, like New Mexico, Florida, they're all doing CTE textbook adoptions right now. So we do some of that, we feed into that. We'll go, hey, our courses were approved by your state.
Okay.
And they're being reviewed. So we know they're being reviewed already. It's sometimes just engaging people in, does it make sense? Or the classes that we're presenting, do they make sense for your program and how we can help them? Because eDynamic Learning actually has acquired 3 other companies in the last 2 years.
Okay.
So we can actually support a school district starting in 5th grade. We have a supplemental tool called Learning Blade, and it is focused on STEM, career exploration, and computer science. But it's this library of supplemental lessons and activities and hands-on projects for 3D printers if they have a STEM program, and just tons of different interactive things to get students engaged in those areas, right? So STEM, career exploration, which is geared more towards 5th grade through 8th grade. It can go up to 9th grade, but it starts to be a little, maybe they think it's not grown up enough for them. But they do 5th through 8th grade for supplemental tools. And then we have curriculum, like I said, for CTE. We even do elective courses as well, but we have a huge CTE library, complete pathways in business, IT, health science. We've got education things, but we have a program called Career Ready, which means if they complete the pathway, they are prepared to sit for an industry certification. And now there's a big difference between just getting a certification and a nationally recognized certification.
Okay.
So there are some programs out there that have certifications, but they might be specific to like Southwest Airlines.
Okay.
Right? So you get this program, they have this partnership, they get this program, but they would be entry level with Southwest Airlines.
Okay.
Ours are different because we have cybersecurity specialists, right? We have these NOCD certifications that are recognized everywhere. They can do dental assisting. They can do hotel management. So just a wide array of programs that they can jump into with us. Become certified, and we actually offer what we call a pass promise. So if the students sit for the exam and they don't pass it the first time, then we will actually pay for them to take it a second time.
So they pay for it the first time, but then you guys have a guarantee that if they're not successful based on going through you guys' curriculum, then y'all will pay for it the second time.
Right. And then we integrated another company called Knowledge Matters. So we just acquired them. And about a year and a half ago, maybe around that time, and they are a simulation program. Kids actually go in. So what we've made is something we call virtual internships. So they can use the simulations on their own if it fits with the class they teach. But we also have this program called virtual internships. A lot of rural schools have hard time getting access to internships, things like that. There's not a bunch of businesses. They have to bus students out to other places. And this will actually allow them to gain all of their soft skills that they need to go into the workplace. But then it allows them a simulated environment to actually run a program from start to finish.
Wow.
Every single piece of it. So say they're running a restaurant or a hotel, or if they're in cosmetology and they want to run a salon, right? They can pick those different businesses to run. They have to have a business plan. They have to actually simulate it within the program, and they get reviews. on their service and their program, and they have to figure out how to adjust their program to make sure that customers are happy, that their reviews are good. So they're doing social media and websites, and they have to turn a profit. They love it. And we incorporate with like the DECA programs, FCCLA, those types of things. We do huge scholarship challenges, and man, the presentations that come out of it are amazing.
That's awesome.
I think one of my favorite ones, there's a young lady that actually took the things she learned in her simulation, and they market and run their school store. But it's not just like sometimes people just set up a room, right? People can kind of buy t-shirts and stuff. They actually dress mannequins and they do all these things. They have marketing and social, and it's just really cool to see kids really own that and put it into play, right? And if you're getting that in high school, what are you going to do? Even if you do decide, I think there's a misconception that people think CTE means that's just for kids that don't want to go to college, right? This girl, maybe she wants to go into fashion design. And by the time she gets out of high school, she already knows how she's going to run a store, how she's going to market everything. And she's just going to go in and hone those skills in college and just knock it out of the park. Right. So that's the space that we're in. That's kind of what we do. And just looking at making that even better and more accessible. And I think that's where we dive into the school district.
That's awesome. Let's fast forward 5 years going into 2029. Do you still see yourself with this company?
For sure. I think CTE is really getting a spotlight right now, starting to pick up. Gone are the days where, like when I was in school, you only had a couple options. You could do auto mechanics class. They had a shop class, right? It was more like woodworking, not really welding at that point. And they had home ec, where you cooked and washed clothes and learned how to set a table. Right? That's what kind of your options. And then even as a teacher, I think they only pulled in things like the ag piece for FFA, and that incorporated like floral design. That was about the extent of your options. And so that's why people started going, oh, CTE is just for those kids. It's just for those kids that aren't going to go to college. I don't want my kid in CTE.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But now with the price and the expense of college, I'm not kidding you. I started this job. I told my kids, I was like, there's any of these things that you want to do, let's get you through these courses and you can do the industry cert. I'd rather you find out now
that
it either is or is not what you wanted to be, and before we step into this college experience, right? And decide we're going to invest all this money. I taught career exploration to middle school kids. It culminated in this project where they had to talk about their research and what they did and what they wanted to do. Every little boy wanted to be a football player or a basketball player, right? Girls wanted to be teachers, or, maybe some doctors and things like that. But even those, the doctors and lawyers, it was more if that's what their parents did.
Right.
Not really that they knew that that's what they wanted to do, but they were exposed to that's all they're exposed to. Kids go to the doctor, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they're in a situation where they know what a lawyer is. Their dad might be a welder or a mechanic or things like that. So it's only what they're exposed to that they know, just like me. What are other jobs teachers can do? I had no idea. We weren't exposed to those types of conversations.
Yeah.
Now we have the opportunity to say, nobody's negating the importance of English, science, math, but we're saying it's the earlier the better. Start thinking about what you want to do, what your skill set is, and let us nurture that for you, right? And really, truly set you up for success. And I think that just culminates into everything outside once they step out. Even if they do something completely different, they have a certification they can fall back on, right? They can go to work. Let's just say that,
Well, I love what you're doing. And I always say that one person's story is another person's survival guide. So I know there's somebody that's watching us right now and saying, man, you know what? I'm going to reach out to Jaime because this is absolutely something that I've been thinking about. And, I'm just going to reach out to her and see how maybe I can, pivot and maybe go take my career in another direction. But I want to just thank you so much for coming on the show, just sharing your story, your journey with our viewers and our listeners. But Jaime, before you leave, can you share some parting words of wisdom? Tell us how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Sure. I would just say to people that are still in education, look, there are more of us. I think it's louder, the voices against you, but I think the majority of us are still supporting you,
Sure.
Right? We want you to win. We want our kids to be successful. So if you're in that, if you're still in education, you're still boots on the ground, right? We're supporting you. There are resources like ours. We want to support you even more. So not just the day-to-day, but the curriculum aspect, making sure that we're making your life easier, but also enriching students as well. I just say constantly learn and adapt. But if you get to the point where it's not serving you any purpose anymore, then it is time to step away and think about something else, go in a different direction like I did. And I'll be honest, I felt that at first, like, oh my, I'm leaving my kids, because you do. For every story you tell after you become an educator, they're your kids. They will always be your kids.
For sure.
Right? When you step away, it's hard to make that disconnect sometimes. But when you jump into something like ed tech, you're still bringing value, right? I'm helping kids every single day, and I'm passionate about that.
Love it.
So there are other things out there that you can do. I just say, hey, reach out. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You can find me. It's Jaime.Boyette at eDynamic Learning.
Okay.
Help you with anything you want to do curriculum-wise, from a teacher to a campus to a district implementation. We're there to help you. And thank you for letting me come on and tell my story. You can tell I get into this. I love these conversations.
You're passionate about it.
We'll always be passionate about education, for sure.
Love it. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for coming on the show, and definitely want to stay in touch. And yeah, I wish you all the best.